Hey everyone, welcome to Question Period Rewind. I'm Donna Skelly, the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly of Ontario. Get ready to travel back in time to 1986, the year when Microsoft went public, the Oprah Winfrey Show was first syndicated, and when Wayne Gretzky was at the top of his game with the Edmonton Oilers, breaking his own NHL record for the most assists and the most points in a season. These are records, by the way, that he still holds to this day. Now, let's take a listen to what the House was talking about.
Order. Oral questions. The member for Fort William.
Mr. Speaker, maybe be the appropriate time to run for the leadership.
Which party, Mick? What do you got in mind?
You're lucky Larry's not here.
Make us an offer.
Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Industry and Trade. The Minister should be aware of the ongoing efforts to save the Great Lakes Forest Products Paperboard Mill in Thunder Bay and 150 jobs at the mill. The mill union, for example, following recommendation of the Rosehart report, has agreed to negotiate a new contract with the company. The government now has nearly 3 months to review the Rosehart report, and that the union has done its part, given this government bungling of the softwood tariff issue has put 1,000 jobs in the north at risk. Will the minister tell us when he will be providing financial assistance to help modernize the mill and to help get those 150 laid-off employees back on the job?
All right, you want to know when?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, of course, the number of employees that have been laid off and potential is of great concern to this government and to me as the minister. Those matters are presently under consideration.
Crown. Supplementary, the member for Cochrane South.
My God.
Mr. Speaker, supplementary to the Minister of Industry, Trade and Technology, the member from Fort William has brought a very serious problem to your attention that's been sitting there for 3 months. We've brought to your attention a number of cases in Northern Ontario where bush workers and mill workers have been laid off, principally because of your bungling of the Washington tariff case. What are you going to do in Washington and in Ontario to help the 150 laid-off workers from the Grenville Martin Mill in Sault Ste. Marie?
Minister?
We're very
If the member had been here last week, he would have known that last week the Minister of Natural Resources did accompany Pat Carney to Ottawa. We are continuing our discussions with officials from the United States Commerce Department, and we will continue to fight this issue to the end to see that it is resolved properly.
Final supplementary, the member for Cochrane South.
Mr. Speaker, to the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Technology. If you are fighting so hard to protect the Ontario lumber industry and Ontario jobs, why did you not file a notice requesting a hearing prior to the final determination on the tariff case in Washington? You had until early November to file a notice under the provisions of the preliminary determination in order to stand up and fight for Ontario workers, Ontario industries. You did not file a notice. You will not be a party to the final determination hearing on December the 1st in Washington. Why are you refusing to fight for Ontario workers in Washington?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, we are continuing to fight for the people of the province of Ontario, and especially those that are affected in the north. We are following the process. We are working with the federal government and the other provinces concerned, and we are certainly doing our share.
New question. Order. Order. New question, the member for Brock.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of the Environment. The Minister takes much pride in the way he is dealing with the environmental crises facing this province. But in the face of his so-called pollution abatement programs, we still have major pollution problems in our own backyards. How can the minister justify a cutback of $1.5 million in municipal transfers for sewage treatment programs at a time when the amounts of such transfers should be increased substantially?
Minister?
The member for Brock would know within a particular fiscal year, there is an opportunity when pressures arise in one specific area to provide additional funds to municipalities which may be in a position to utilize them for either the purposes of providing drinking water and more often dealing with sewage problems. What happens, as the former Minister of the Environment who is here today would tell you, is that there are a number of municipalities which make application for funds. The ministry puts them in on a priority basis as they relate to the actual pollution problems. As we all know, the pollution problems that exist in a specific area. We then find out that there are a number of municipalities that, for their own reasons, do not decide to proceed within a specific year. When they do not decide to proceed, we are then able to move down the list to other municipalities which indicate an interest in obtaining those funds. And you will find the experience has been, I think, over the last several years, that in fact all of the municipalities that are able to utilize funds and would be eligible for such funds are in a position to have those funds available to them.
Supplementary, the member for Sarnia.
Supplementary to the Minister, Mr. Speaker. The Minister is well aware that the City of Toronto has put before him a plan, a remedial plan of action to extend both storm sewers in the City of Toronto and also to expand on holding tanks in the East Beaches in order to reduce the amount of pollutants that are presently entering the natural environment. Why would the Minister at this time not agree to participate in the funding of the study that is proposed to be undertaken with respect to that plan? And why would he not commit to even more dollars in order to reduce the amount of pollution which is directly related to the lack of separation of storm and sanitary sewers, recognizing, as the Minister does, that there is no more effective way to clean up the environment than the way that has been suggested by my colleague and in relationship to the question that I'm raising with you now?
Minister?
Now. I always enjoy the opportunity to be lectured on how to run the Ministry of the Environment by the former Minister of the Environment who's had a good deal of experience in this particular matter. In fact, I consult him from time to time about matters of this kind to draw on his experience and sometimes accept the advice, and more often than not, being a new government, I don't always accept that advice. But specific to the question that the member asks, he will know that our government has put forward a substantial amount of money, additional money related particularly to what is generally called beaches cleanup, but is really dealing with environmental and pollution problems within metropolitan Toronto and the various municipalities therein. In addition to this, the member will know that I have discussed at the annual meeting of the Council of Resource and Environment Ministers with the federal minister the possibility of obtaining additional funding, or new funding at least in this case, from the federal government, because I've indicated a clear willingness to accelerate our program. The municipality is on side, the province is on side. We are awaiting your friends in Ottawa to put forward their money, and I think we can accelerate this program to a very great extent, because the member identifies important ways of dealing with the pollution problem. That is by, in some cases, the separation of storm and sanitary water, but in most cases it is the idea of holding tanks and other mechanisms to retain the water, which I think can be very effective. I think there was...
Supplementary, the member for Brock.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, the minister is trying to pass off his responsibility onto the federal government for sewer and water financial support. Given by example the report on the Welland Canal and 12 Mile Creek, which cited municipal sewers as being major causes of pollution, when will the minister face the problem and come up with substantial additional funding for the much-needed sewer projects for municipalities around the province?
Minister?
Member is correct in identifying the fact that that we have spent a substantial amount of money. He would know, for instance, that there is a specific study which has been undertaken under the auspices of the Ministry of the Environment, where we are providing $750,000, the municipality, some additional funds for a $990,000 specific study to pinpoint the actual sources to eliminate those sources of pollution to the 12 Mile Creek. In addition to this, he would know that I had the opportunity to present on behalf of the Government of Ontario a check to Dr. Ian Brindle, along with Dr. Michael Dickman is working on, and Dr. Arthur Houston working on the 12 Mile Creek and the Old Welland Canal, an amount of some $180,000 to that group. And that we have in fact increased overall Ministry of the Environment fundings from $314 million in 1985-86 to $361 million in 86-87. And I know that he will find, that my colleague, the Treasurer, has been most sympathetic and helpful in regard to providing these funds to fight pollution in this province at a rate which simply couldn't have been comprehended in the past because the previous government was busy spending its money on other priorities.
Hear, hear. New question. The member for York South.
Speaker, I have a question for the Premier about the Auto Pact and its role in the free trade discussions with the United States. I wonder if the Premier can explain why, if the Government of Ontario has been on top of all these discussions and has been fully consulted, why it was that the Deputy Minister of Industry and Trade was desperately on the phone to the New Democratic Party Research Office on Friday trying to get a hold of the memorandum telling where the federal government was really going.
Premier?
Sure, we're aware that a lot of stuff is bootlegged out to you people, and we want to go to the fastest sources possible to get some of this information. I can tell you that particular memo that I gather was sent to Mr. Broadbent in a brown envelope. I assume he assumed it was in your hands, because we assume that any time Mr. Broadbent speaks, you speak as well on that very same issue. But I don't want to make light of a very serious issue, and that is a memo that we were certainly not aware of, that may or may not be influencing the discussions. Our views on that matter are extremely clear, as are yours. And I assure you I'll continue to pursue the lines that we have in the past.
Supplementary?
Well, just what is the line, Mr. Speaker? I think we're entitled to know. We've now been told that in the view of the federal government, to quote from the words of the memorandum, there remains a widespread belief that the Auto Pact safeguards are still central to the health of the industry. This misconception is an obstacle to necessary change in automotive trade rules. Now, the Premier will know that in the House of Commons on Friday, Mr. Wilson, in response to several questions from members of our party, never at any point gave the assurance that the Auto Pact was not going to be on the table in the discussions. Mr. Speaker, I wonder how the Premier can possibly square that failure on the part of Mr. Wilson with his comment in the legislature on June the 3rd in response to questions from me on this very subject, in which he said, with respect to the question about the Auto Pact, there was a very firm assurance from the Prime Minister last night that he would not raise the Auto Pact. That's clearly now been broken. That's clearly been broken. I'd like to ask the Premier, what does he intend to do now to speak up and defend Ontario's interests just at that time when it's crystal clear that those interests are going to be sold out by the Tory government in Ottawa?
I have the very same concerns that my honourable friend has on this particular matter. Now, don't ask me to stand in this House and justify Mr. Wilson, a leaked memo from someone or other, what Mr. Reisman has done or anything else. My position is now the same as it was when I discussed it with you some time ago, the same position that I put forward very forcefully to the Prime Minister, to my colleagues, the trade negotiators, and anyone else who will listen. And that very simply is the Auto Pact should not be on the table under any circumstances. It's that simple.
Final supplementary, the member for Oshawa.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it is clear from the contents of that memo that whether you know it or not, the Auto Pact is on the bargaining table now. What are you going to do to end these talks before our auto industry goes down the drain?
Premier?
Speaker, if you're asking me to walk away from the table tomorrow, if that's your suggestion, then I'm interested in hearing your views. As you know, it's something that we're watching. We're putting our views forward in a very forceful way on the matter. The federal government knows our position. Look, I can't speak to every little memo that's in the hands of the federal government, and nor would I try to address it, to try to justify it. You understand that, I'm sure. Well, there's hundreds of memos written, and whether it, in fact, I perhaps you don't share my view, but I take the Prime Minister at face value, and when he says it's not on the table, and that's very clearly my view, and I assume your view, and I'm not sure the view of my friends opposite, but that's where we stand, and you know that.
New question. The member for York South.
Make Brian Orser look like an amateur.
The Premier must be the only man in Canada who takes Brian Mulroney at face value at this stage of the game. Speaker, I'd like to ask a question to the Minister of Consumer and Commercial Relations about insurance. Our member of my research staff phoned a number of insurance companies to asking that if he were a 21-year-old living away from his parents and driving a 1985 Plymouth Reliant K-car, 4-cylinder with 4 doors, what kind of a rate would he be quoted by a number of insurance companies across the province? We phoned 5 insurance companies in Windsor, several in Hamilton, several in Sudbury, Toronto, all across the province. I'd like to ask the Minister this question. What does he intend to do about the fact that the majority of replies that call received was that the individual with a clear driving record for 3 years would only qualify for the so-called Facility Association rate, which is the rate, as the Minister knows, which is supposed to be confined to so-called high-risk drivers. Just what does the Minister intend to do to stop our young people from facing insurance costs of $2,800, $3,000, $3,200 a year in order to be able to drive a car in the province of Ontario?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the leader of the third party for that question. He should know that we have been in discussions with the insurance industry to do away with the rating based on age, marriage, and sex, and that we have to develop a particular database that will, in fact, rate drivers strictly on their experience and accident record, and that is something that we're working on.
Work on it.
Supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, by the time the Minister ends up working on it, those drivers that are under 25 will be over 50 and may have an entirely different set of experiences with which to qualify for insurance. I'd like to ask the Minister specifically now, what is he going to do for all those drivers who have been told either that there is no insurance for them, one insurance broker, for example, who said once he was told at the age of the driver, said that he had no market for people under 25. Another person said that the rates, again, would be the strict facility rate and for no others. Another insurance broker in Toronto said you have to have 5 clean years of driving if under 25, and nobody else will qualify. Just what do you intend to do for those tens of thousands of people who are being referred to the Facility Association rates quite unfairly, that are being charged rates of $2,500, $3,000, $3,500 a year, and you say you're working on it? You've been working on it for months on end, and the insurance companies are continuing to rip off consumers day after day after day, and you're standing here simply apologizing for those insurance companies every day of the week.
Mr. Speaker, the problem of the Facility Association is very complex. The Facility Association is there to provide insurance for those hard-to-place drivers. What has been happening is that some insurance brokers, rather than send their customers to another broker, are referring them to the facility. I'm not happy with that solution. We've talked to the Facility Association. It is not the problem of the Facility Association. It is the problem of some of the brokers who are referring their customers there rather than advising them to seek insurance elsewhere. I can say to you again that there is insurance available. People have got to shop around to get it, and it's an area that we are working on.
Final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, when the minister says in this House the insurance is there to get, all you have to do is shop around, you are insulting every single young person who does not have a parent under whose policy he or she can qualify. It's a direct insult because their experience belies utterly what you've just said in this House. The only shopping around they can do is go from one company that'll charge them $3,000 to another company that'll charge them $3,200 to another company that'll charge them the benign rate of $2,850 a year. Just when are you going to stop this colossal ripoff and stop standing in your place apologizing for the insurance companies who are consistently ripping off the people of this province with their exorbitant rates?
Mr. Speaker, contrary to the leader of the third party's accusations, I'm not defending the insurance industry. What I'm saying is that the marketplace is there. There are people who are getting insurance, and if they shop around, they can find it.
Order. New question, the member for Wentworth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a question of the Minister of the Environment. Last January, when the Chipman plant in Stony Creek had an accidental fire and subsequent gas emission, it was discovered that the Minister of the Environment had no equipment available enabling it to determine whether or not toxic gas had escaped into the air, and that in fact the Ministry relied on equipment provided by the Chipman plant itself. The Minister will recall that at that time he gave this House an assurance that he would look into this inadequacy of his ministry. In light of that assurance, can the Minister tell us why, when a similar incident took place yesterday at the Waxman and Sons metals processing plant in East Hamilton, his officials again did not have the appropriate equipment and were forced to admit that they were uncertain of what gas was being emitted until an air monitoring unit was sent in from Toronto?
Minister?
It's my understanding, and in fact the equipment was available on this occasion. There's about three different pieces of equipment. There's something that's called a Tega, which is a very large machine, which costs $1 million, and it is has to be calibrated before it can be utilized, and it can be brought in on occasions of this kind. For instance, it was used in the situation of Mississauga, where yes,
Order.
well, it does. I mean, there's some pieces of equipment that can be used immediately, and some that require to be calibrated before it actually goes in to look at the potential substances that you'll be dealing with. Well, I know the PhD across from here will lecture us.
Order. Order. Interjections are out of order. Please answer the question.
There's also equipment called the MAMU, which is a smaller mobile piece of equipment which is utilized. And in addition to this, a third piece of equipment which we purchased, frankly, as a result of the situation the member refers to. And he'll recall that the evening we had the public meeting that I drew that to his attention. It's a mobile unit that can be almost carried in this nature, such as this, on a shoulder, and it's very effective at determining what gases might be around in that situation. It's my understanding that our crews were on the scene. We had someone from the Environment Ministry there within about 20 minutes, and that equipment was brought in.
Supplementary?
Mr. Speaker, thank you for that ancient history lecture. The fact remains, although I recall distinctly, Mr. Speaker, what the Minister said about the reasons why there was inadequate equipment available last January, this still does not solve the problem that occurs now less than 10 months later, or approximately 10 months later. The fact is that although the incident yesterday started about 10:30 and there was prompt notification of all parties concerned, which I'm pleased to see was an improvement on behalf of the company, of the fire department, the police, and the health officials. There still were no results.
And the question is?
It's coming. Hold it. There were no results from the ministry tests until after 6 p.m. That's over 6 hours later. Only at that time were they sure what they should do with it. In view of the fact that we've now had two such incidents in which the ministry was incapable of ascertaining the extent of the danger to the residents of Hamilton-Wentworth, the minister must agree that an industrial area like ours in Hamilton-Wentworth needs the appropriate air testing equipment, whatever it is, to be readily available right away even if it means
Order.
that the ministry's
Order.
air testing unit
Minister.
should be kept in
Order.
instead of Toronto.
Order. Would the Minister?
The is not correct, Mr. Speaker. As usual, he's interjecting without a knowledge of the specific issue in this case. In fact, there are certain of the pieces of equipment, such as the Tega machine, that do have to be calibrated before they go in. There's certain other pieces of equipment which can be put into action much more rapidly, and indeed it is. The member is inaccurate, and indeed it is available. I can also indicate to him that the evidence that was presented at the time, we were dealing with a different circumstance in this situation as compared to the Chipman situation, for instance, that in this circumstance the zirconium would create a non-toxic zirconium oxide, according to those who are experts in that particular field. But we do have this equipment. The equipment was brought in, and as you know, as the member would know, Mr. Speaker, the evacuation that did take place was in fact simply a precautionary measure, was not one which was ordered by the Ministry of Environment, but was in fact a precautionary measure, as we wish to be overly cautious as opposed to underly cautious in matters of this kind.
New question. New question, the member for Hamilton East.
Mr. Speaker, on the same topic, and it's not a question of what we had in the way of monitoring devices on the scene. Yesterday's chemical fire at Waxman's on Centennial Drive in Stony Creek raises a serious question with respect to our ability to respond quickly to a potentially deadly situation. Regional police, firemen, the medical health officer, and ministry personnel responded quickly and were prepared to make decisions. The problem, Mr. Minister, was that attempts to find out the toxic content of the smoke and how to deal with a zirconium fire met with a recording and nothing else. Decisions were made based on the Federal Transport Ministry's Hazardous Material Handling Guide. Who, Mr. Minister, are the responsible authorities we're supposed to contact, and will they be available when faced with a crisis such as this?
Minister?
The answer is first of all, the member is quite correct in assuming that the Ministry of the Environment does have a role to play in this regard, and should be contacted and should have be in a position to provide the kind of assistance that is necessary to the local authorities, such as fire departments. In some communities, of course, I think in many of the larger communities, the fire departments are now in a position to determine a lot of the answers that the member is referring to. But, for instance, it's my understanding that Mr. Boris Boyko, who is the regional director as far as the Ministry of the Environment is concerned for that region, was in fact on the scene himself, working with the local authorities and dealing with whatever information we could gather at the time.
Supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, I was on the scene for part of the incident as well, and I'm wondering, Mr. Minister, when we are going to have a complete inventory of all of the chemicals and toxic substances stored by the various companies and municipalities, and who will be responsible, I ask you once again, on a 24-hour basis to advise on the potential threat of the material burning or the chemicals that may be released, and how to deal with the material. Because it took them several hours to bring down the dry materials from Mount Hope Airport, and found that didn't work, and then use water on the fire. There was a complete lack of information, and calls to the federal office simply brought a telephone recording on the 11th of November.
Minister?
I can indicate to the member, first of all, that my ministry did give information, for instance, to the fire department as to the potential for an explosion if you had the mixture of water with the hydrogen, which could create, of course, an explosion, and we did provide that particular information. In relation to the other question, which I think is a longer-term question, which I know the member has had an interest in, the member for Windsor Sandwich, the Minister of Labour, of course, introduced into the legislature a bill which dealt with the right to know, for those substances who are being used. And I think that kind of legislation that the member has been interested in himself for a number of years would be very advantageous to us in terms of having available for not only the workers in the plants, and that's exceedingly important, but also to the civil authorities in that area, the information that's required in each of these substances. And when that bill passes this House, that will in fact be reality.
New question, the member for Kent Elgin.
Mr. Speaker, through you, the Minister of the Environment will welcome a tough question from this side of the House. Citizens of southwestern Ontario are concerned about the U.S.-generated acid rain on their health and on their crops and on their buildings. We see dramatic results upon steel buildings, or galvanized steel buildings, and we worry about the insidious results upon our health and our livestock and our crops. I understand that the U.S. Court of Appeals struck down an order to the United States Environment Protection Agency that would have placed curbs on the production of acid gas in the U.S. Midwest. And I understand that the minister has asked for a rehearing of the case. I would ask, what actions are you taking to back up this position that you have taken, Mr. Minister?
Minister?
The court case to which the member refers is one which was very disappointing to, I think, particularly to New York State. I had the opportunity to discuss with the Attorney General of New York State, Robert Abrams, this matter because he had been deeply involved in the court case. And we were encouraged, first of all, when the lower court was prepared to make a ruling that various of the states would have to reduce significantly their sulfur dioxide emissions from their coal-fired plants. Unfortunately, this was appealed, and the Court of Appeals did, in fact, turn it down. And as a result, we had discussions with some of the states in the U.S., particularly northeastern states, which are impacted adversely by acid rain, and decided that we would, in fact, launch an appeal. The state of Maine is exceedingly interested in this. New York, Vermont, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and others have this particular interest. And I want to indicate to the member that we do intend to pursue that through the court system in the form of an appeal.
Supplementary, Mr. Speaker. You have the USA Environmental Protection Agency, and you'll have the Midwestern states to fight in this, particularly Ohio and Kentucky. And what chance do you think you really have of winning this?
Well, it's, you know, whenever you go into court, I guess there's no guarantee. The lawyers in the House who smile probably know better than I what chance there is. I think we have the weight of public opinion on our side, for one thing, and I think that with the resources of the other states, I mean, we have some strong allies. When I mentioned New York State and Maine and Vermont and the other states that I mentioned, I think we have some good allies, and I think we have to go back into court for two reasons. One, because we want to win the legal battle, but second, to indicate clearly to our friends on the other side of the border that we are prepared to pursue these matters along with our allies, the environmental groups on the other side, and the various states, to attempt to get the kind of decision we think is justified. In fact, the decision, as I saw it from the Court of Appeal, was based on a procedural technicality and really seemed to fly in the face of some of the U.S. laws. So we certainly intend to pursue that. I can't guarantee the outcome. The judges and the courts make those decisions, but I'm pleased to pursue it on behalf of this province.
New question, the member for Lincoln.
Bill Harry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question's to the Minister of Environment. He'll be glad he came today. Given the recent court decision, Mr. Speaker, that dismissed charges brought by the Ministry of Environment against Wellesley Hospital and St. Michael's Hospital on charges of illegally dumping pathological waste and the previous acquittal of two other hospitals on these similar charges, could the Minister offer us his logic for pursuing this prosecution?
Minister?
Well, I know that there are some who would prefer that we do not pursue prosecutions on environmental matters, and I'm not saying the member. I don't want anyone to mistake the fact. I wouldn't say the member himself, but there are a number of people out there who don't want to see us pursue a lot of these situations. They would simply prefer us to make some noise about them and not do anything in particular. However, in this specific case, the ministry officials who are from both the Investigations and Enforcement Branch and those who are in the legal department made a determination that they had gathered sufficient evidence to proceed with the prosecution. Now, the very fact that we have, as a ministry, decided to do that is a matter of legal decision. I, as the minister, do not interfere in the prosecution cases. I do not determine who shall be prosecuted, who shall not be prosecuted. I do not say we should stop prosecutions or we should initiate them. I simply have a broad policy that where the Investigations and Enforcement Branch believes that there is sufficient evidence to proceed in court, that they should do so. They did so in this case. The specific judge in this case did not agree, and we are now contemplating looking at the transcripts and determining whether an appeal would be appropriate.
Supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Minister, I think this is one particular case where perhaps you should exercise some judgment and have a look at the whole circumstance. The judge in this case, His Honor Judge Nieper, in passing judgment, said the following: how these charges came into being is beyond me. And he also cited the ministry for failing to properly examine and preserve evidence and the highly questionable qualifications of witnesses that it brought before the judge. Would you agree that your actions have not only cost the taxpayers in the hospital considerable amounts of money, but you've now seriously jeopardized your credibility as minister and the credibility of your ministry in future prosecutions?
Right. Minister?
I would not agree with the member in that regard, nor will I interfere in this case to give political orders to stop an investigation or an appeal. I believe very strongly that it is the role of the minister to stay out of the prosecution end of things, because it could really place a minister in a conflict of interest situation as to determine if the minister, on a political basis, for instance, were to determine who should be charged and who should not be. No, what I said, the member interjects, what I did say was that we are examining all of as a ministry, not the minister, the ministry. We, the ministry, MOE, Ministry of the Environment, not the minister. The ministry, the legal people in the ministry, the Investigations and Enforcement Branch are at the present time looking at the potential decision. I know the member for North Bay, again, might well be pleased when those who might be in a position of breaking the environmental laws win a case in court. If he wants to say that, then let him say it. That's exactly what you're saying. You people didn't want to prosecute, did you? Well, there's a new regime in Toronto at the present time, a regime that believes when there is evidence to proceed with a prosecution, we're going to do it.
New question? If we can conclude that debate. New question, the member for Ottawa Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question is to the minister responsible for women's issues, who about a year ago in a speech told women in Ontario that they should stop excluding themselves from jobs that are traditionally held by men. I'd like to know what advice the minister may have for Nancy Bailey, who's a fully licensed carpenter employed by the Toronto Transit Commission. She was, in September, transferred out of her job in the carpentry section to take a new position as a bus cleaner. She's going to have to take a cut in pay, and she's been transferred to a department where bidding rules make it practically impossible for her to pursue her career as a carpenter. The move was triggered not by a slowdown in carpentry, but by a requirement in the collective agreement that the employer offer a permanent job to temporary employees who have a year of service. I wonder if you could tell us what such victims should do.
Minister?
Well, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry, being asked to give advice so quickly on facts, circumstances with which I'm not familiar are difficult, but if this woman works in a plant that is unionized, which I gather to be the case, she will have to understand that the terms of the working conditions are affected by the collective agreement that has been negotiated by the trade union acting on her behalf, which is a vigorous and well-known one in that case, and her employer. And if she is unsatisfied with those terms, she will have to participate more actively in the bargaining process.
or file a grievance if she believes that the terms have not equitably been applied to her. In short, the collective bargaining agreement affects and disposes of her rights in this circumstance.
Speaker, it's interesting that the minister, having first told women to go and solve their problems, now turns and says it's the union's fault. The union in this case is supporting Nancy Bailey. Tonight the minister is going to announce the winners of the Ontario Achievement and Employment Equity Awards, and I hope he really gets the winners checked out properly, because it's pretty easy to get snowed in this business, apparently. Nancy Bailey's picture was published on a leaflet put around by the TTC showing what a glorious and equal opportunity employer they are. And further, the TTC says in its annual report that it's increased the number of managerial and professional positions by 14.5%, and you find the name of a woman on their list of management people. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask the minister when he's going to follow through on his leader's commitment during the last election campaign that he would, in forming a government, require that affirmative action programs be instituted in the public sector of Ontario.
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that was a long question that led down a lot of alleys and byways. Let me begin at the beginning. First of all, I never indicated to the women of Ontario that they'd have to look after themselves, which was the preamble number one to the question. The second place, it is of no account that the union in this case supports Miss Bailey. The fact is that the difficulties that she confronts are a function of the collective bargaining agreement of which the union is one of the authors. The third point is that, as everybody knows, in circumstances of this case, everything should be done either through collective bargaining or through incentives to encourage employers to develop employment equity programs. And that, not something else, is what the awards dinner this evening is designed to honor. Those employers in Ontario who have responded to that kind of initiative and who have started employment equity programs that are designed to assure that this kind of situation will not be replicated.
New question. The member for Brock.
Mr. Speaker, in the absence of the Premier, I have a question for the Minister of the Environment. The Minister will know that recently one soft drink manufacturer has increased the deposit on its 750 milliliter glass containers to 40 cents from 30 cents. Does the Minister support this move?
Minister.
I can indicate to the member that I support those moves which are designed to attract the greatest return possible on those particular containers. And where it relates to a competitive position as it relates to commercial, for instance, it is not, I guess, for me to comment on the commercial end of it, but any initiative that is taken on any occasion which would have the effect of returning more bottles to the place from which they came is one which I think must be supported.
Supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Minister, the retailers have indicated that the 40-cent deposit will be a deterrent to purchasing returnable bottles. The manufacturer said in such case he will supply the retailers with alternative containers. This will also discourage returnable bottles. If this occurs, will the minister guarantee this House that he will monitor the practice closely to be sure that his recycling law requiring soft drink companies to sell at least 40% of their product in refillable containers each year is enforced?
Minister.
The answer, that's I guess a somewhat complicated question, because one would have to get, well, the member for Bellwoods has a question. I'll let him wait for his opportunity to ask the question. If the question is, no, I'm not the one asking the question, I'm answering the question, Mr. Speaker. It's a detailed question, and I'm trying to answer it in the most detailed fashion. We of course always want to watch carefully through the Recycling Advisory Committee, which has been established in conjunction with the regulation on pop containers, which sat for 4 years without any decision previous to us coming into office. The member will remember that. We have that recycling advisory committee there. All of the key players in the industry, all of the key players are there in that industry. They provide me with excellent advice on how to proceed in these matters. And of course, as a ministry and as the advisory committee, we monitor extremely carefully all the new initiatives that are being taken by various of the players in this game to ensure that none of the activities they undertake are going to violate the regulation, and indeed that they're going to promote the return of those bottles.
New question. The member for Welland Thorold.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I have a question to the Minister of Consumer and Commercial Relations, and it concerns a letter dated August the 5th, which was sent from the manager of a facility association to the Ontario Motor Coach Association, and 2 copies of it were sent to the senior people in your ministry. He was replying to the Motor Coach Association's request to you for public auto insurance like they have in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and British Columbia, and he defensively provided in writing figures, and I quote, of the loss suffered by the BC and Manitoba Public Insurance Corporation over the last 5 years, where he said $512 million for BC and $26 million for Manitoba. Not underwriting loss, the loss. Given the Canadian underwriter statistics show, as does the annual reports, that the profits of BC were in fact $511 million during those last 5 years, and Manitoba profits were $92 million, and they had not lost money in any year. I wonder what you've done or your ministry has done to correct that dishonest information.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the information that the member comments on did not come from the ministry. It came from the insurance industry. And if you have any quarrel with that, you should take it up with them.
Supplementary.
I'm not surprised that the minister has not corrected that misinformation, because he uses the same variety. I wonder if he will recall. I wonder if he'll recall in a reply to me back on October the 14th, as quoted in Hansard, he said, from the latest figures available for 1985, for every dollar of premium that was taken in on automobile insurance, $1.31 was paid out in claims. And he said the same thing to my leader the other day. I wonder now if he will deny that $1.31 was not, in fact, paid out in claims, but included the huge cost of claim settlements, and will he deny that his contrast does not include the huge return on investments amounting to $137 billion last year for the insurance companies that they received from their investments, and thus the figures he gave has no meaning?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the member for Welland Thorold stands in his place all of the time and tries to foist on this House a second-hand socialist solution to insurance. Now, now, if you're going to deal with the problem, then how about dealing with it in a proper way? He says that $1.31 is not the proper amount because there's a lot of income that comes from investment. I can say to you, sir, that if this government was in the insurance business, the only thing they would be doing is paying out claims against premiums. There would not be any investment income unless you call the Consolidated Revenue Fund investment income. So it makes a lot of relevance.
Order. 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 It's time for the next question. The member for Brock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a question for the Minister of Municipal Affairs. In February, the Town of Vaughan Council, during an in-camera meeting, decided by a 4-3 vote to sell, contrary to a staff recommendation, 14 acres of land for $2.75 million. Opposition to the sale by both local ratepayers and town staff was based on Council's failure to expose the property to public sale, or to obtain what was felt to be the fair market value for the land. Will the minister accede to the request of local ratepayers who have petitioned the minister and been in touch with him for some 7 months, and pursuant to Section 180 of the Municipal Act, call for an inquiry into the propriety of this sale?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I can assure the member that staff is still looking into it. You might think that 7 months is a long time, but I can assure you that the ministry is concerned with the event, and very shortly I'll be back to not only the member but the council involved with a resolution or a decision.
Supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The information knowing that an investigation was underway was communicated in August. Can the minister tell us when he will conclude the investigation and tell the residents of Vaughan that the matter will receive a full and complete public scrutiny through a public inquiry as envisioned by the Municipal Act?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the member is quite right. It is still under investigation, and at the present time I don't have a full answer to give you, and while it's under investigation, I cannot meddle in their affairs.
New question, the member for Windsor, Riverside.
Speaker, I have a question to the Minister of Health. I'd like to ask the Minister why his ministry approved the sale of Resthaven Nursing Home in St. Thomas to Crescent Care Nursing Homes on September 6th, which will grant Crescent Care a monopoly of nursing home beds in St. Thomas, and is contrary to the policy of your ministry, as you've enunciated several times.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'll take a look into the circumstances of that particular sale and get back to the honourable gentleman. I can tell the honourable member that presumably there was disclosure in the sense of details of what was being proposed in terms of sale, but I don't know whether the sale actually occurred in terms of purchase of shares or whether there's a transfer of assets or how it was handled, but I will advise the member fully about the particulars of that sale.
Supplementary. The minister should know that when his party was in opposition, members of his caucus in particular, Mr. McGuigan, opposed this type of sale, where the residents are really what is being purchased, because Crescent Care has bought Resthaven and then moved all the residents from Resthaven Nursing Home to Crescent Care, which is really a purchase of human beings as an asset in the nursing home system. And I'd like to ask the minister how his ministry could possibly approve this sale when there was no consultation with the local municipality, no consultation with the residents, no consultation with the residents' family members, just simply an approval by your ministry, which will grant Crescent Care a monopoly in this community.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as I indicated to the honourable gentleman, I will look into the details of that particular transaction and get back to him with the details of what was happening. I will also further advise the honourable gentleman, as he knows, having taken a look at the proposed amendments, which a copy of which he provided with me, I think, about a week ago, that are now being discussed with a number of interest groups around the province, that there are steps being taken through those amendments, those proposals, to deal more specifically with questions of public interest about which this question is addressing some concern. I will be pleased to provide more details to the honourable gentleman at a later time, Mr. Speaker.
New question. The member for Durham, York.
I have a question for the Minister of Agriculture. Beef producers under tripartite stabilization are sending in their $6.60 a month and stating the number of cattle purchased, and their next statement coming back to them is showing no payment, no pay-ins, and no cattle purchased. Why is your administration of this program so screwed up?
He's in charge. Because he's in charge.
Minister?
Well, I suppose, Mr. Speaker, that's the opinion of the honourable member who posed the question. I'm not too sure that there are many who share that opinion, but if there is some inadequacies in the administration of the program, you can be assured, sir, that I will look into it. I will pursue it this afternoon, but I have to tell you, this is the first time that it's been brought to my attention that there is something wrong with the administration of the program.
Get out of your Cadillac.
Well, I'm
Supplementary?
not sure what's wrong with your telephone connections over there, because there are many beef producers in the province right now are calling asking how they can get out of that program. They are so fed up with the operations. In fact, in some cases, they are getting letters arriving, the forms are arriving on the 14th of the month and being asked to be back into the office by the 15th for the next, ready for the next month's statement. The system just simply isn't working, and I would ask the minister to check into it and see what the heck he's going to do about it.
Minister?
Well, I certainly will check into it, Mr. Speaker, but I have to tell you that I probably traveled this province to a far greater extent than the honourable member who posed the question, and I can honestly say, Mr. Speaker, that the beef producers of this province have not come to me to outline the problem. Neither has the Ontario Cattlemen's Association, which is the chief spokesman of the cattle producers in this province. As a matter of fact, I had a meeting with the OCA executive just a week or so ago. Never once was there any mention made about the inefficiencies or the inadequacies in the administration of the tripartite program. Not one mention.
New question, the member for Etobicoke.
I have a new question for the Minister of Consumer and Commercial Relations. Is the Minister aware that according to Paul Tooze, the President of the Better Business Bureau of Metropolitan Toronto, that approximately 5,000 people are dissatisfied with the service provided by the rental agencies operating in Metropolitan Toronto? And if so, what is the Minister going to do to prevent tenants who are looking for accommodation and have no place to live from being ripped off by these companies that are preying on their particular condition?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, I'm not aware of that particular concern expressed by Mr. Paul Tooze. I would say to you that if it's a matter of rental housing, and it may more appropriately be addressed to the Minister of Housing, if there are agencies that are registered under my ministry and under the Business Practices Act, that is something I would investigate. But if he would bring to my attention the issues that he's talking about, I'll be happy to pursue it for him.
Supplementary?
Well, the problem to the Minister is that there is no registry either under your ministry or the Minister of Housing, and in fact, that customers have complained that these agencies simply clip newspaper advertisements, that they send them to accommodation that is non-existent, that landlords that have not listed accommodation with those agencies are in fact on their lists, that the lists are out of date, and in fact that the tenant who is looking for accommodation and who has paid good money cannot receive that deposit back when in fact those agencies do not find him any kind of accommodation. And when are you going to stand up and announce to us that you are going to bring in the kind of bonding system or the kind of licensing system that other jurisdictions have, such as New York State, to protect the consumers in this province that are being ripped off by these agencies?
Minister?
I'll be pleased to look into that matter and get back to the member.
New question? Member for Dufferin-Simcoe.
Mr. Speaker, to the Minister of Municipal Affairs, over the past 20 years, Mr. Minister, there have been many millions of dollars spent in the Collingwood-Wasaga Beach area in order to protect land there for the use of tourists and citizens and residents. Are you going to put more funds into the Shoreline Protection Fund in order that this resource can be protected?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, I will be before Management Board very shortly. I'll be asking for $1.5 billion additional dollars to, I'm sorry, $1.5 million, Mr. Speaker. I didn't want to give the Treasurer a heart attack. That's much better. But it's 1.5 million. Well, it's better to absorb the shock here than that management, Mr. Chair. But, and this $1.5 million, Mr. Speaker, will address the municipalities that have been asking for additional funds.
Supplementary?
Mr. Speaker, to the Minister, will you allot that $1.5 million to the requests that are in my area, or will you up your sights and ask the Treasurer for much more money?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, again, I'll be asking for $1.5 million, and we will look at all requests, and we will address them as necessary.
New question, the member for Oakwood.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Education. Mr. Minister, on June the 23rd, I asked you a question in this House about the Heritage Languages program, and at that particular time, I would like to read Hansard. You said that you will be reviewing your ministry policy, and in late summer, you will be able to tell me what your ministry policy is, and indeed, if you're going to change that ministry policy. Could you tell us what your review what kind of fruit your review has bared?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I appreciate...
Order. Any response? Sorry.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the honourable member's question. I can tell him that we are still looking at various aspects of the heritage language program. As the honourable member knows, this government is strongly committed to that program. We are now allocating something in excess of $10 million through the continuing education budget of the Ontario Ministry of Education. Some 71 or 72 school boards are offering heritage language courses and programs involving some 51 heritage languages. I appreciate the honourable member's concern that we do more. I will keep him posted on future developments on this very important area of public policy, which I repeat, from this government's point of view, is something that we feel very strongly and positively about.
For all questions has expired.